time to look at your soul journey again. And today we are going to carry on from the core practices we developed in the previous episode about spiritual development a few weeks ago. Remember the core practices: breathing, meditating, and moving. You learned a breathing exercise, which is really breathing on a count. The count I introduced to you last time was 4, 7, 8. And you learned a meditation exercise that really is all about simply counting to 4 and thinking only of counting to 4. And every time you realize that you've forgotten what number you were on, you lost count, or that you were thinking about something else, and that happens all the time, counting from 1 again. And a movement practice, ideally the 12-step salutation to the sun, commonly used in yoga practice or any other practice that might suit you. I urge you to go back and look at previous episodes to find that out. Right now on the screen you can see the dates that those screened on Cape Town TV and YouTube, and you can go back on YouTube. You can go back and look at the special meditation episode and on the episode that taught you the essentials of that core practice. Today, we're going to pick up your questions and issues that arise out of that and hopefully inspire you to a little bit more. So with your foundation now in place, you really are on the way to creating the spiritual cornerstone at the center of your life. But keeping it there is not quite as simple as putting it there was. There's a honeymoon period, you're enjoying meditation, but that's going to wear off or has worn off, and you're beginning to discover some problems that you have to deal with, some questions that you have, your rational mind, which is niggling away. So in this episode, I want you to understand some of the obstacles that your mind and your life might even create. As simple as the principle of meditation is, it is common to have a lot of questions and problems right at the beginning. The most common of those is, I can't stop my mind from wandering all over the place. I think about anything except counting. Remember that part of the method of counting your breath is actually meant to train you to notice and become aware when the mind wanders, by teaching you to get back to the beginning of the count. So as long as you always come back to 1 at that point, you're actually learning not only how to meditate, but how to notice and get back to. And that's gradually going to train you. I mean, the normal behavior of the mind is to fantasize, to daydream, to worry about silly things, trivial things. If you engage in the mind and always try and quiet the mind, you're actually going to make it more difficult for yourself. So the process is not to engage the mind by tell it, stop thinking about that, because then we just get anxious. I'm not thinking, I'm not meditating properly, I'm thinking too much, or you might actually start reacting to what it is that you're thinking about, because trivial things tend to wander us down the path. Worries tend to kind of claim that they're important and demand our attention all the time. So don't react to what you're thinking. By not reacting to what you're thinking, you'll gradually learn how to not be the victim of the mind's natural behavior without having to do anything unnatural, trying to stop it or trying to clear your mind, as if that was really possible. So it's just really all about sitting there. Every time you notice that you've wandered or you've worried or you're fantasizing or daydreaming, whatever, just go back to 1 and start counting from 1 again. That's all you need to do. You don't need to worry about your mind wandering. It will do that. Your job is to go back to 1 and count from 1, and you've solved the problem of your mind wandering, even if it seems to carry on doing it. Don't go there. The other thing that some people say is, I just sit there and nothing amazing happens. So like, what's the point? And am I doing it right? I think some people think they're going to have mystical experiences or see angels or something like that. Nothing amazing is supposed to happen. meditation can be different every day, and sometimes it does feel a little amazing, like something extraordinary happened, but mostly it's a very ordinary experience. It's meant to be a part of your day where you do nothing except allow the mind to rest and empty for 10 minutes. And that is the amazing thing about meditation. The longer term effects are also what we're after, not the short term effect of I had an amazing experience. In my meditation today, I realized the following. You shouldn't be realizing anything in a meditation because that means your mind was engaged, of course. Your mind isn't in this picture. You can't realize. As soon as you realize something, count 1 again, because you shouldn't be thinking about what you're thinking about. Just allowing the mind to go on with its business while you count from 1 to 4. And perhaps later on, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, learning to change that to an image or to a mantra or something similar to that. So for the most part, you're not looking for any experience out of meditation. You're looking for the long-term benefit that dramatically reduces stress and anxiety in life, dramatically increases creativity and even productivity, and most important, helps you begin to understand who is the real me and what does it feel like when I'm the real me. Because, of course, in the end, it's our spiritual paths that we're looking for. Something I also hear is, it's the weekend. I had a late night. I can't stop falling asleep in the morning. So, it's ruined my meditation. Again, you don't want to engage too much with yourself. So then miss meditation. Go back to sleep, have a late morning, and meditate again tomorrow. It is true that discipline is important. Regularity is the best way to create discipline in our lives. So it's not something that you'd always want to do. It's same as that question. Sometimes people say, I've missed a day, have I ruined my progress? And as important as it is to build and maintain that foundation of core practices, you don't want to create a religion out of it and a bureaucracy of rules and regulations and shoulds and shouldn'ts and punishments for what you did or didn't do. You don't want to go down that road. You want to treat yourself as a human being. So if you miss a day, it isn't the end of the world. And if you sleep late and decide you can't get out of bed, it's not a train smash. Just don't take what I'm saying as a license to kind of come and go as you please and just meditate occasionally. Maybe you can start with a less rigid rule that says, I've got to meditate 5 times a week, or 5 days of the 7 days of the week, or something like that. And just a way of monitoring that you're not letting yourself off the hook too much. And also important, never let yourself off the hook 2 days in a row. If you let yourself off the hook 2 days in a row, it's going to be really hard to pick it up on the 3rd day. So that's why we get back down to the basic idea of, as long as you're not doing it often and it's just a way of not succumbing to excessively rigid routine, for the most part, you are going to meditate every day. And just take into account that stuff happens. Not always possible, just get back to it the next day. Another very common one is, as soon as I start sitting down to meditate, I get itchy in 100 different places. What am I supposed to do? What you're supposed to do, scratch. If you don't scratch, you're going to be sitting there thinking about scratching and not scratching, and I can't wait to get to the end of this so that I can scratch. All of that's going to happen. So again, that's just going to ruin the meditation, whereas scratching for a minute isn't. And in the first time that happens, you might get 100 scratches because your mind is trying to distract you. But if you just scratch, eventually the trick wears off and you'll stop becoming itchy. And in reality, you won't get that itchy anyway. So if you feel itchy, scratch. Don't become obsessed with not scratching or trying to not do. Of course, the other very common one is noise. There's too much noise, I can't meditate. Meditation isn't about noise or not noise. It isn't about silence per se. We've got lots of those images, monks and monasteries and cathedrals, and yes, silence helps us as we endeavor to meditate or grow ourselves spiritually, because it is one of the distractions that becomes removed. But the fact is, meditation is meant to be about our everyday lives. It's not meant to be about temples. We want to be able to do it wherever we are. We want to be able to do it when we're traveling, or we're staying at someone's house and we're in a different place, or we've got guests in our own house. We don't want to have, again, that rigid religious bureaucracy that says as soon as something changes, I can't do anything. Because life is going to be full of changes and changed circumstances and different people and so on. The point is that if you learn to meditate while there is generally a lot of noise, you'll develop the ability to meditate anywhere under any conditions. Basically, it makes you stronger. So you should welcome it. You shouldn't worry about that. Maybe you should even get to the point where sometimes you deliberately allow for it's a noisy day. The people upstairs are building. I'm going to meditate actually, as a way of not getting irritated by their building. Because when they're building and I'm sitting there meditating, I don't particularly think about the noise, although I continue to hear it. So that's the trick that you are learning. Of course, we get the most bottom line question of all, I can't meditate at all. Can't I do something else? Or am I not able to grow spiritually because I can't meditate? If you think you can't meditate, then you're too attached to the idea that there's supposed to be some kind of special experience or special result from meditating, and there isn't. If you know how to sit down and you know how to count to 4, you already have the ability to meditate. As long as you keep counting the breath and start from 1, and every time you realize you aren't doing it, go back to 1, you're doing it. Keep practicing. That's the secret of meditation. Just do it every day. Some days are good. Some days it feels like your mind ran the whole show. But as long as all you are consciously concerned with is that every time I become aware, I start counting from 1 again, you are doing it. The other core techniques that we looked at, breathing and stretching or yoga exercises, are pretty simple and pretty straightforward. People also have a few questions that arise out of that one. The most common ones. Well, firstly, I can't touch the floor, or I can't stretch in that direction, or I can't stretch far enough. And especially if you've never done any kind of yoga or series of stretching exercises before, you might feel a little bit intimidated by that and think, okay, well then I can't. So remember, this isn't a gym routine. There is no need to push yourself. There's no need to do anything that you can't do. Just do what you can do to the best of your ability. The important thing is to get some stretch and some sweat. You have to activate body, mind, and soul at the same time. And that's part of the purpose of our stretch. And also part of the idea of greeting the sun and focusing, connecting ourselves to the larger cycles, connecting ourselves to nature, connecting ourselves to larger consciousness, all of those things. The sun is a great ancient symbol of larger consciousness, so much so that it was sometimes thought of as a god or given a central role in divine systems and even, of course, in astrology. So all of that is a way that stretch in the morning, the sun salute, is a way of connecting yourself, your body, your mind, your soul to something greater. So that's the most important thing. And however you end up doing that, and even if you modify those exercises, it's fine. Ideally, especially if you feel like you're making progress and you really get a lot out of those stretching exercises, it might be worth just going to a yoga studio for a while and joining in. The most common question and issue about breathing exercises is the feeling of not getting enough air when you breathe in. It's a very common question that I get asked, and breathing slowly through the nose. So remember, our core breathing exercise was breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. And people say, it feels like 4 is too short, and I want to breathe in more, and I'm not getting enough air. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, are you someone who breathes through the mouth? People who breathe through their mouths will feel that they don't get enough air when they start learning to breathe through their noses. But even if you're not someone who normally breathes through the mouth, it's actually not unusual to have that problem. So the trick is to increase or decrease the rate of your breath to find the pace that is comfortable for you. So if you're counting to 4, and count to 4 at the same speed that you're going to count to 8, but just breathe in more. Just learn to adjust the rate of your breathing to relate to the counting. And then gradually you will learn how to feel comfortable and actually discover that there's a lot of psychological panic and imagined anxieties, all of those things. I'm not getting enough air, I'm not getting enough air. It's a life function. So it's your body trying to say to you, stop that meditating, you need to breathe. But you can breathe, and you are breathing. And you actually need to get, again, past the head and discover the benefit of that breathing exercise itself. So while breathing into 4, just breathe enough to fill your lungs. But then when breathing out at the count of 8, of course, you would be essentially breathing out twice as slowly as you were breathing in and getting it all out. So you still need to make sure you fill your lungs, and that's the basis of your counting. And then the breathing out might feel as if you're a little short of breath, or it's happening too slowly, but that you will get used to. If you are uncomfortable in the beginning, do what you can do comfortably. Breathe more shallowly if you need to, or don't breathe out all the way if you need to. In the beginning, it's necessary adjustments. It's important to be comfortable and to get there gradually, to teach your body what you're doing, to teach your mind it's okay, let go, we're going to be fine. If you're lying on your back for the exercise, that is half the problem. So sitting up will also help you, but gradually learning to increase the depth of your inhalations and exhalations as the days go by until you reach the full depth of your lungs is really going to be best for you. It's really about being comfortable in the doing it. You don't want this to be some kind of physical challenge. That isn't the point at all. It's really to connect body, mind, and spirit. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to fit these core spiritual practices and all spiritual practices into the rhythm of your life. One of the things we're trying to achieve is to have a systematic approach to creating a spiritual core at the center of your life, but having the freedom to grow without too many rules and too many rituals and too many automatic things. So you've got to allow yourself to adapt what you learn here, adapt to your own circumstances, and adapt to your own challenges. It is very important to keep the core principles in mind, but it's also important not to allow your spiritual practice to become something that you dread or you dislike because it makes life more difficult. It's not that it's supposed to be easy, but it's certainly supposed to be part of life and a natural part of life that fits in the rhythm. The challenge of getting up in the morning to do it, or finding the time to do it, etc., is the not easy part. But when you're doing it, it needs to be something that feels natural. And in dealing with the questions and issues that I've raised and dealing with the methods, the important thing is to learn to make it natural. And that also means adapting our lives in certain ways. And the most basic kind of first adaptation we need to do is to fit it into our lives correctly, to make it fit into the flow of your life and to fit into the flow of your early mornings. And that is going to take a little while. It takes a few days or a few weeks to work out what time works best for you to wake up and how much time do I need for the bathroom ablution cleanse before I get going, and what practical arrangements do I need to make to even do the stretching arrangements in my room. Are there things I'm going to bump into? Do there things I need to move around? Am I going to disturb anyone else? So all of those kind of practical details, you're going to have to find your way around in the beginning. And your mind is, of course, going to, as ever, jump in on the act and say, okay, well, therefore you can't, or the kids need to go to school, or all of those things. As important, and of course the kids are still going to go to school, as important as things like that are, and important as all the other details of your daily life are, it's just about finding a flow and finding a rhythm, and that you are going to be able to do. There are practical details, and it is your mind who tells you they are insurmountable. But part of self-mastery, in the end, is not allowing the small things of the world to gain the better of you. and some things we can do nothing about, but even still, it mustn't gain the better of us. If you are struggling to fit the morning practice into your life, you probably should wait a little before you try and develop it further. In months ahead, weeks ahead, we've got more episodes dealing with more advanced techniques and the next level of commitment that you can make for yourself, and that is going to mean you're not in a rush to get there. This isn't a race, it isn't an accomplishment, you're not graduating or qualifying in anything. You are just going to do your basic every day. I keep on going, and you will gradually change. Even if you allow yourself 6 months, say, of just doing these core practices, as you deal with the questions, as you make it your rhythm, if you commit yourself to that, you might solve a lot of other problems that can easily come up. And because you've learned how to create a space and how to create a rhythm and how to fit it into your life so you don't have excuses coming from your mind the whole time. And of course, the result of that will be that when we do have new practices and new techniques to add to the process, they fit in easily for you. So that's going to be something that you can do. There isn't a rush. The point is that you're developing a core, and if you want it to be a strong core, the more slowly and carefully you build it, the longer it will last, and you want it to last a lifetime. If you take a long time, then the core you develop is very strong, and it becomes so much easier to build on top of that. And wherever you get to, end up, or whatever, is where you ended up. It wasn't a goal, it's where you're going. It's the journey that's important. I know that it's an old cliche, but in this case, the journey is about doing some exercises that are really important to grow your spiritual practice. The benefits come not only from that, but also from the commitment. And that commitment has to be kind of mediated with reality, because otherwise you're going to end up avoiding. Obviously, everyday life is going to be demanding, and it's easy to say, I need to do what I need to do, so life takes over. So you have to find this balance between your particular commitment to your spiritual life and the commitments that you have every day. So one of the ways to do that is to be answerable to someone. And the way to be answerable to someone when you're on your own is to keep that journal that we've been keeping in the background, that I've mentioned a few times and told you to write in a few times. So it's important to give that journal a more important role in how it relates to your spiritual growth. So for the journal to be useful, you're also going to have to use a little bit of time every day. So it's enough that you've already had to find some time to set aside to do the meditating and the breathing and the other practices. You need another 15 minutes to write in your journal. It doesn't have to be at the same time, but it is best at that time. But still, could also be at the end of the day if you're meditating, and so on, at the beginning of the day, and so on. You have a lot more freedom because you don't require that special circumstances. So even if you find a particular time in the day when you have the rhythm, just before lunchtime, just after lunchtime, I've got my little space. So take a little while to find where in the day works for you, and then you can start working with your journal. I say 15 minutes, hopefully not long before bedtime, also because you don't want to overdo it. If you start having to write every thought and every detail and everything else in the journal, it starts becoming a huge undertaking, and you don't want to be writing an autobiography, especially because it's time demanding, in which case the mind says don't do that, and the whole commitment falls apart. So by saying 15 minutes, I mean 15 minutes. I mean, you've got to learn to summarize or communicate in a clearer way to yourself, but maybe that's part of the focus that can help you make sure that you're developing the discipline and the commitment and all of those kind of things as well. In the end, you will have created 2 important slots in the day that relate to your spiritual practice. The one in which you do your 3 core techniques of meditating, breathing, and movement, and the one in which you do your commitment technique of writing in your diary for 15 minutes or for a length of time that suits you. And those 2 parts of the day can be the pillars that hold up your development of your spiritual life. So we've now reached the point of getting the whole foundation in place. We have our core practice of breathing, meditating, and moving, and we have our reflection practice, perhaps later in the day, of recording where you're at, what issues you've faced, what struggle you've had with your mind, or the opposite of those things. But being answerable to yourself, because you're going to have to write something in those pages, helps you keep yourself on the track. Or if you did miss the practice, to just write a note about that in the journal and say, wow, that's going to make it harder to miss 2 days in a row as well. You're answerable only to yourself, because your practice is the practice of developing that self. Hopefully now all you want to do is get to that journal. So you go and do that. I have the most unexpected surprise guest as my interview next week. So make sure you join Facebook page and make sure you watch next Friday, the usual time. See you right here.